on the world. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's get right to it.
Fantasy news
from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
You know, as sports fans, Daniel, oftentimes we remember things relative to where we were when they happened. And I think that Andrew Luck's retirement on Saturday night might be one of those moments. I mean, maybe I'm overstating it a bit, but I remember the shock. I mean, I had to check several times if Adam Schefter's tweet was actually, it was not Adorn Schefter or, Adam Schefter, but the T was actually, like there was some sort of mistake. Scheffler.
I was waiting for it too. I was in the middle of playing PUBG with my buddy Corey, and all of a sudden this thing came out, and I was like, someone must have accidentally read an incorrect tweet and sent this out. There's no way this happened.
It was the most stunning story of the offseason. Andrew Luck, at the age of 29, has decided to retire from the game of professional football. We are not here to pontificate on the merits of his decision, whether he's right, whether he's wrong. The guy did what he wanted. He's entitled to that. We respect it. But we are here to try to break down the fantasy football potential of Andrew Luck, who just a couple of months ago, Daniel, probably around, I would say maybe going into training camp, so not even a full month ago, he was still in many people's rankings, mine included, the top 3 player quarterback. The guy was unbelievable last year. He had 11 games with 285 passing yards and I believe 2 passing touchdowns. Rock solid. Andrew Luck, prodigious talent, and lived up to it in many ways during his time on the field. I understand injuries, etc. But there is a lot going on here, Daniel. But, I bet I will give you, shock. What else came to mind to you when you saw this news?
I could not believe it. This felt like the first time, there are other retirements that have come up that I've sort of looked at and been like, I was a little bit surprised by that.
Yeah.
When Calvin Johnson retired, I sort of felt like I could maybe see it coming, at one point, just as another large name to have done that. Andrew Luck legitimately was just like, I could not believe it.
Well, it's also the timing of it, right? It's a whole different story when you retire in March versus when you retire in August. But let's get to the fantasy side of it, Daniel, because I think the first question people are asking is about quarterbacks themselves. Yep. And if you have already drafted, then it may be an issue. Now, I think, Daniel, in most cases, drafts that have been conducted over the past week or two probably did not include many people that only drafted Andrew Luck as their quarterback, right? Like if you did a draft last Wednesday, for example,
right,
and you took Andrew Luck as your only quarterback, that feels like poor planning as it were. But I think for quarterbacks, Daniel, the good news is I don't make light of someone's decision, but there are so many quarterbacks in fantasy football that from the overall stock of fantasy quarterbacks, this retirement is not necessarily going to alter your league that much.
No, and we had talked last week about the idea of whether or not, Andrew Luck was going to be somebody that, where they were at in our quarterback rankings, and I had said that, he had moved down mine a little bit just with the injury lingering, and it's such a deep position. I feel a little bit for everybody that had drafted Andrew Luck, went into the season. Hopefully, like you said, you don't just draft only Andrew Luck, given all of the things that were going on, but you know what? It's such a deep spot this year. There are definitely other quarterbacks that you'll be able to roster, pick up off the waiver wire as your second backup. But my question is about Jacoby Brissett.
So let's get right to it, Daniel, because you're right. Jacoby Brissett is now the new starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He previously started for them 2 years ago. And in 2017, it was an abomination of a season. But we know that so many things were different then than they are now. Now, the pass-catching group looks different. It's still T.Y. Hilton at the forefront of it, but the offensive line in 2017 was a turnstile. It's now very good. But if you go back to the numbers from 2017, they paint an ugly picture. 32nd, that would be dead last in yards per play.
That's bad.
30th in scoring. That's also very bad. 20th in passing percentage, which,
to be fair, that's before they had a superstar at tight end.
That's right. That was
Jack Doyle.
Before Jack Doyle. Actually, Doyle was there.
He was
before
there.
Eric Ebron was there. But still, the point is that we're going to use a lot of points of reference from 2017 with Jacoby Brissett, and I'm not sure it's fair. Here's where I land, though, right now, is if I were drafting today, just because Jacoby Brissett is an improved player, and the Colts, who have said previously, we view as a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, not a player that's on my redraft radar unless it's a 2-quarterback league. And I am willing to be proven wrong. As a matter of fact, I do hope Jacoby Brissett proves me wrong because the Colts have done so much right that I don't want this season to be entirely derailed. But you look at the weapons around him. They are good, but still some question marks beyond T.Y. Hilton, right?
Yep.
We believe that Eric Ebron's going to regress. Jack Doyle's a possession tight end, not a big play tight end. And Paris Campbell, exciting. Devin Funchess, we'll see. Like, there are some good pieces around him.
Yeah.
And yet, there are so many other quarterbacks, Daniel. You can just pivot a different way. I've got Jacoby Brissett, I believe, 26th in my quarterback rankings right now. Are you more optimistic about Jacoby?
Nope. I'm about where you're at. He's a mid to late 20s quarterback for me.
Okay.
I think when you look at everything that he's going to have to be able to do with this offense, like you said, he's got a lot of weapons to be able to utilize. It's whether or not he can be efficient and effective enough to be able to keep this Colts as a, fringe playoff team. Because like you said, a lot of pieces there for him to be able to work with. But the one thing for me is Jacoby Brissett is not, just some backup like you had said. He's not, and it's no offense to these guys, but he's not Brett Hundley. He's not Deshaun Kaiser. He's not
right.
Connor Cook. He's a guy that can come in, can immediately be, help this offense. And so I want to pivot to the rest of the playmakers. How's that going to affect guys like T.Y. Hilton, Devin Funchess?
I think that's probably the most pressing question that people asked following the Andrew Luck news,
Yeah.
is what does it mean for T.Y. Hilton? Now, again, I don't want to use 2017 for all frame of references, but in 2017, when T.Y. Hilton was wide receiver 27 with a full season of below average Jacoby Brissett,
Yep.
he had a 23% target share. Now, last year, his target share from Andrew Luck was 23.8%, so the volume was relatively in line. I knocked T.Y. Hilton down a few spots after this Andrew Luck news, but I didn't move him so far down that I no longer consider him a player that I would have comfortable in my week one lineup. Now, maybe I feel more comfortable with him as a flex play as opposed to my wide receiver 2, but he's still a big play waiting to happen. And I had said last week when we were talking about Andrew Luck that I had already kind of baked in the possibility of Jacoby Brissett starting, which is why T.Y. Hilton was down to wide receiver 17 for me, as opposed to like wide receiver 11 or 12.
Sure.
But all this sort of ties back to your belief in Jacoby Brissett. And just fair or unfair, like I am going to feel more comfortable with players that have a better, more established offense. I understand that Cooper Kupp might be the third best Rams wide receiver, or at least the third option in some ways or some weeks. But Sean McVay-led offense with Jared Goff, they're a well-oiled machine. Like if you feel more confident in them than the number one player in Indianapolis, that's fine. So knocking Hilton down, but not knocking him out.
So I love this, the idea that you like Cooper Kupp, who's, like you said, the number 3 option.
Yep.
Kyle, what do you say we play a name game real quick?
Does that work? Can I be the one that calls for a name game or no?
You could do that.
First name game.
I'll make Fields into a cranky old man before the end of the year.
People view me as like an exciting young outfield prospect.
You're like a homeless person.
You can get off my lawn.
You use insane ice cream for breakfast logic.
Shout out to Kelly Clarkson, my favorite American Idol of all time.
Stop it.
Yeah, I went there.
Fields insane. It's not just me, right, Daniel Dopp?
Really?
You are drinking the Kool-Aid. You are buying the hype.
Thanks, Dad.
That's half full, Nate. Nate, I called you Nate. I'm punch drunk.
This feels like a no-fly zone to me.
You guys are all... That'll make its way into a name game drop.
Easily the worst take you've ever had is saying Kelly Clarkson is your favorite American Idol on
I've thought about that one a lot since that time, and I feel like an immense amount of like I just feel off. I feel remorse for Carrie Underwood.
So good.
I've thought about it more because Carrie, I mean, she's amazing.
She's great.
Shout out to Lee, probably. Who made that drop? Probably Lee.
No one knows.
Nobody knows. Any
Thanks,
idea,
Kyle.
behind the board?
No name. We'll give Lee credit. Why not?
Yeah, Lee
Yeah.
seems to do all of them. So shout out to you,
Jackson
Lee.
probably would have known.
Yeah. Ooh, wow. Good point.
Yeah.
So here's a question. T.Y. Hilton, I'm just going to run down ADP here, all right? Tell me when we start getting into a spot that you feel comfortable with. T.Y. Hilton or Adam Thielen?
Yeah, Thielen for sure.
T.Y. Hilton or Julian Edelman?
Edelman for sure.
T.Y. Hilton or any of the 3 Rams wide receivers?
I would still take all 3 of the Rams wide receivers.
T.Y. Hilton or Kenny Golladay?
Yeah, I'd say there I'm still at T.Y. Hilton, but it's really close. Now, with Kenny Golladay, it's, the offense has, it's a better quarterback.
Yep.
But Kenny Golladay, less accomplished player, and this offense has not clicked over the past 2 seasons.
Sure. T.Y. Hilton or Alshon Jeffrey?
That's it's funny because they're actually kind of the same player for me in this way now. Is that like lower volume of overall targets, right? I think Alshon was at like 54 catches last year. Like T.Y. Hilton would not surprise me if he was at like 65 catches for 1,000 yards. The question is how many touchdowns. So
Yeah.
I'd say that it's like I am coin flipping there, leaning towards T.Y. Hilton.
Okay. Last 2, T.Y. Hilton or Tyler Lockett?
I'm still with T.Y. Hilton here because, like, what we talk about with what T.Y. Hilton needs to have go right. Same thing goes for Tyler Lockett, right? He still has to be a big play receiver who catches a bunch of touchdowns, which is hard to predict.
Last one, T.Y. Hilton or Chris Godwin?
I'm going to go T.Y. Hilton here as well. I love Chris Godwin. We'll talk about him more on the show, but still in on T.Y. Hilton here.
There's still just the thing is he is an excellent wide receiver. Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? And understanding that Jacoby Brissett has to be more efficient. He has to be a better passer. But T.Y. Hilton is not a guy. You know, Tyler Lockett is somebody that when I look at him, like everything has to go right. And it did last year for him, but there's going to be some regression. T.Y. Hilton is just a better wide receiver than Tyler Lockett.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
And so
at this juncture of his career,
I'm excited to see what he can do this year.
Part of the conversation is also about the running backs. And for Marlon Mack, you can move him down a little bit in your rankings, which I think is fair because of this Jacoby Brissett news. But if you're bullish on Jacoby Brissett, then maybe not so much. I think we learned a lot about Marlon Mack's usage last year when the Colts were playing with the lead as compared to when the Colts were playing from behind. So Marlon Mack, if you believe in the idea that there will be more loaded boxes this year, he averaged 2.53 yards per carry, which was 32nd of 47 qualifiers last year. In other situations, when there was not a loaded box, which is defined as 8 defenders in the box or more, he was 5.04 yards per carry. So if you think defenses are just going to test Jacoby Brissett by crowding the box and saying, try to run the football, we dare you, then maybe you're disappointed in Marlon Mack. But here's where I think it's more interesting, Daniel, is last season, Marlon Mack, when the Colts were leading, played 1.66 snaps for every one snap played by Nyheim Hines.
Okay, so like a 66% increase.
Yep, when they were leading. So when they're leading, then Marlon Mack is playing much more than Nyheim Hines.
Sure.
When they were trailing last season, Nyheim Hines played 2.45 snaps for every one snap that Marlon Mack played. So basically, when they're behind, it's a Nyheim Hines show.
Yeah.
So here's what I did. I moved Marlon Mack down a little bit in my rankings, just a little bit, because still outstanding offensive line. Really good offensive line. Marlon Mack has some positive big play metrics. Beyond that, I believe in the player.
Yeah.
Passing game involvement was a red flag we discussed last week, and it's whatever the opposite of a red flag is for Nyheim Hines.
It's a green flag.
Green flag for Nyheim Hines. Or would it be a checkered flag? A checkered flag.
Yeah,
right.
we'll do that
one. It's a checkered flag because checkered flags are good. I think that maybe Nyheim Hines is I hate to say winner because Andrew Luck retired, but you know what I mean? Like, it is a positive outcome given this news.
Yeah, understanding that when you're looking at whether they'll be playing from behind or not, there's a good chance that now with Jacoby Brissett, they won't be winning as many games as what they had planned on. I don't know what the Vegas line moved to from there, but
I think it's at like 6.5.
6.5.
Yeah, I think it moved dramatically from like 9.5 to 6.5.
I mean, that 3-game swing is huge.
Huge.
So from that standpoint, the idea that Nyheim Hines, who is a guy that, you know, I would sort of target towards the later rounds of my draft, all of a sudden has a lot more upside to me from a pass catching standpoint.
Well, that was part of the conversation that when Matthew and I were discussing Hines a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was even last week, was Matthew had noted, and I don't know if this is unfair, was just like, you know, the upside of Nyheim Hines is probably depressed relative to other players that were being drafted in like the 40 or 45 range for running backs in terms of ADP. This might open the gate a little bit for Nyheim Hines, who had, you know, plenty of games last year with double-digit scoring in fantasy football for PPR purposes. So it's certainly helped the value of Nyheim Hines to the point that, like, I sort of would equate him to what Duke Johnson was when Duke Johnson still played for the Browns and they actually used him.
Yep.
It was like, hey, like, you know, there are some weeks where you can kind of count on him catching like between 6 and 7 footballs, even if he rushes like, you know, 80 times next year.
And that's a guy that has a bye week fill-in or someone gets hurt and you just need someone that's going to be on the field getting snaps. Like the upside of Nyheim Hines over whoever else you're going to be getting there, I'm going to like a lot. And also, you know, just Kyle put this on the note here, which was fantastic. Jacoby Brissett completed 69.4% of passes when targeting running backs in 2017. He was 59% to all other positions. So almost a 70% completion rate just to running backs, and that is Nyheim Hines' bread and butter. So, I mean...
So stock up for Nyheim Hines is a takeaway here.
I like it.
Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron obviously are going to split duties this year, and if you go back to the games they both played last year, it was mostly the Doyle show in terms of snaps. It was mostly the Ebron show in terms of touchdowns.
Yep.
The last time Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback, Jack Doyle was there. Eric Ebron was not. But his target share in 2017, Jack Doyle's, was 23%. So, but here's the thing, though, is that I think that when you're a young quarterback who was acquired, he was acquired on Labor Day weekend that year. He started in week 2. Week 1, he came off the bench. They were getting smothered by the Rams in week 1.
Yep.
Like a lot of it stands to reason that like coming out of the gates, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of easy routes to tight ends. So I don't know that I don't expect the target share to be the same this year with Jack Doyle. Like I think Jacoby Brissett's an advanced passer now. The offense is advanced too. So I don't know. Like I think my feelings of the tight ends are similar to where I was before with them. Just moved down, like similar in terms of like I prefer Ebron because of the touchdown upside versus Doyle.
Yep.
But both of them moved down a couple of slots because touchdowns I just don't believe will be anywhere near as prevalent.
Agreed. It was a little bit of a wash for me when it comes to looking at both of these guys because the amount that Ebron moves down is the amount that Jack Doyle moves down for me. And so it's a pretty much, understanding they're all moving down a little bit, pretty much about the same spot where you're at.
Yeah, and Doyle was fine last year, 26 catches in 6 games, and maybe that I've overestimated how much Eric Ebron meant to them last year because Doyle was not really playing that much, but I think both of these players, like I think Ebron, to me, and I could be wrong, and I know that there's a lot of red flags for Ebron, but more startable coming out of the gates than Jack Doyle. I know Matthew and I are flipped on that one. The thing that stinks is that this was one of 2 major pieces of news in the AFC South that was very negative. Lamar Miller from the Houston Texans tore his ACL on Saturday, as reported by Adam Schefter. It looked bad the minute it happened. It's a bad sign when a running back just fumbles the ball voluntarily, I should say, just drops it on the ground because of the pain they're in.
Yeah.
I'm bummed for this. It's the final year of Lamar Miller's contract. He has been, as we discussed last week, we did these teams on Double Trouble. Jeez. He's been steady, right? Like he has been basically the same player for each of the past 3 years. It opens the door now, though, Daniel, and people are wondering what it means for the Houston Texans backfield. Duke Johnson is the only name that people really know. Of course, like every team, they've got about 6 running backs on the roster right now.
Sure.
The only name that people know consistently, at least those who don't live in Houston, is Duke Johnson. Kyle posed this question on the fantasy-focused Twitter poll. Is the 2019 leading rusher for the Houston Texans currently on the roster? What say you?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a really tough question. It's hard because we haven't seen Duke Johnson be a lead running back in the NFL since he came into the league.
Yep.
Obviously, he did it in his final season in Miami. He had 242 carries there.
It's weird. There's a very big difference between college and pro running backs. Duke Johnson is the all-time leader in rush yards in Miami.
No way.
Guys like Frank Gore, Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, Edgerrin James, the laundry list of incredible running backs. None.
So you think Duke Johnson is better than all those guys?
That's exactly what I just said.
That's what I thought you just said.
Saquon Barkley too. Do we have that on video, Kenny?
Sure.
But my point. So there is but again, if that's what as much as the Browns may have misused him last year,
sure.
Like if he was this star running back as a runner, A, he would have been used more previously, and B, the trade market would have been even more robust.
Totally.
104 carries is the most in a season for Duke Johnson.
I think he'll beat that 104 carries. I would take the over on that mark. I also think
the over. Yep.
Yeah, I also think that he will be heavily utilized in the passing game out of the backfield. And so, do I think that he will be the Texans' leading rusher? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. I'm
going no.
You don't think so?
I am going no.
You think they're going to bring somebody in?
I think someone will be acquired at some point between now and their first game in 13 days, week 1. The Texans I think they will find another running back. Now, there are a lot of ways to do that, whether it's trade, whether it's on the waiver wire, whether it's a player who gets cut, you name it. But I don't believe their leading rusher is on the roster. So let's just focus in on Duke Johnson as things currently stand. Because people are, like, again, it's the busiest draft week of the year.
It's time.
I moved Duke Johnson up from like running back 35 to like running back 26 right now. So right behind guys like Darius Geis, James White, players who either are the lead back in their backfield, we believe, like Geis, but with some question marks, history of injuries, and just how much is he going to play in the passing game, or James White, who is not a starter necessarily in every single game,
quote unquote starter,
but plays so many snaps and plays such a good offense that it's like, okay, the catches are going to pile up for James White. because I kind of think that, for Duke Johnson, in some ways, an average James White season is what would be best case scenario for him. Last year, James White was like RB7 in terms of total points. He's an amazing player, James White is.
Yeah.
But that was probably an outlier in fantasy points. Like, I think most years I'd expect James White to be like a low-end RB2, which is where I think the best case scenario will be for Duke Johnson. The reason why I haven't moved him further up is just because I do think there's a chance that somebody else shows up over the next 10 days.
So here's that fan question in my head, right?
Yep.
You have a team that needs a running back.
Yep.
We have a team that has been potentially maybe trying to move on from a running back in Melvin Gordon.
I know.
I'm just going to put it on to you, Field. Is there a chance that Melvin Gordon, with the news, with everything that happened here with Lamar Miller, could that entice the Texans to try and make a move?
There are so many ways that the pragmatic school of thought for the Texans is no. Right? Because Melvin Gordon doesn't want to just get traded. He wants a new contract.
Yep.
Do you want to pay $10 million, more than that, $12 million per season to Melvin Gordon to play a running back spot that you could probably, you got Lamar Miller over the past 3 years, 4 years, including this one, was making I think a total of $26.5 million. He was fine, right? Wow. And yet the Texans have a door open to winning the division again. Did it last year.
Yep.
Andrew Luck's retired. Question marks right now in Jacksonville, Tennessee going into the season. You only have so many shots in the NFL. This is not a league of patience.
No, it is not.
Your window to win and do so by taking advantage of your quarterback's contract is right now. Deshaun Watson still on that rookie deal.
I know.
Am I speculating that it will happen? No. Could I talk myself into it? Yes, but
sure.
I'm with you, Daniel. And I post this on Twitter. It's time for them to at least consider it.
Yeah.
Right? At least consider. I'm not saying you're going to do it, obviously, but you have to consider it at this point.
Imagine being a Texans fan and thinking about the idea of I could have Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins and Melvin Gordon and Will Fuller. Do you know how well I would sleep at night if that could be if I was a Texans fan, that is my starting lineup?
Daniel, I'm with you. And this is not, sometimes people in the real football world say, stop playing fantasy football. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think suggesting that acquiring Melvin Gordon is that outlandish of a proposal, right?
No, not at all.
Really interesting. I don't know what will happen there. Definitely have no confidence that it'll happen, but I'm with you. I think it is sort of the elephant in the room right now. A running back who needs to be traded, or at least
would be
open to be traded,
yep.
And a team that has a massive need at running back without any other obvious avenues. All right, Daniel, tell us about Sleep Number, if you would.
Yeah, when was the last time you really slept great, Field?
Not great it wasn't last night.
That wasn't last night?
No, not last night. I didn't sleep great last night.
Isn't it strange that we'll try just about anything to sleep better when it actually could just be time for a new mattress?
Ooh, good call.
If you aren't getting the quality sleep you deserve, you should check out the Sleep Number bed. Right now, at Sleep Number stores, it's the biggest sale of the year. All beds are on sale, and queen mattresses start at only $8.99.
Wow. Okay.
Wish your mattress could be firmer or softer?
Softer for me personally.
Softer. Is Chapin a firmer kind of a person?
No, she's also soft.
She's also so they see that's great.
It's marriage for you right there.
That's what the Sleep Number bed is famous for. You can adjust each side so it's just right for both of you. Maybe you want to be a Sleep Number 25, she wants to be a Sleep Number 30. You guys don't have to fight about the bed.
Right.
How about a bed that helps keep you asleep? The Sleep Number 360 smart bed senses your movements and automatically adjusts so you're effortlessly comfortable all night long. Will you love it? Just ask J.D. Power. Sleep Number has been ranked #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses. For 2018 award information, visit jdpower.com. So come in during the biggest sale of the year, and for a limited time, save 50% on a Sleep Number 360 limited edition smart bed. You'll only find Sleep Number at one of their 575 Sleep Number stores nationwide. Find the one nearest you at sleepnumber.com/FFF.
How about that? There's got to be a Sleep Number. Is there a store somewhere?
There's one in West Hartford, and there is one in Manchester.
All right, let's get to that's very cool. Let's get to some news from Week 3 because it has always been the most notable preseason week, Daniel.
Yeah,
the NFL things are changing, so it won't necessarily be like that forever. But let's start with a couple of pieces of news from the weekend, and maybe just highlights, right? And Dalvin Cook had an 85-yard touchdown run. Dalvin Cook's, it was one run, okay? And it was it was poor defensive effort from the Cardinals, who I think are going to be an abomination on defense this year for the record.
Hopefully week 1 at least.
Let me just tell you something, though. We draft emotionally in fantasy football.
Yep.
You know that. We all do. Last week I made the point that, hey, Kyler Murray, if you drafted after week 2 and before week 3, you're probably saying to yourself, there's no way. There's no way I could take Kyler Murray. They were terrible, right?
Yeah.
We draft emotionally. And Not only that, but we have a recency bias. And last year, if you drafted Dalvin Cook, what you're thinking,
I did draft Dalvin Cook last year.
What you're thinking to yourself is, hey, he came into the season banged up, or recovering from the ACL injury, some injury question marks, and you know what he did? He got hurt. He got banged up. He was inconsistent. You needed to see this over the weekend to reinforce your confidence if you're going to go back to the Dalvin Cook well this year. All of a sudden, Daniel, do you feel implicitly confident in Dalvin?
I am feeling confident after a season in which I drafted him and I played. My team was just very poor based on both him and Leonard Fournette, unfortunately. But seeing this is not one of those. It was tough. This is not one of those situations where, like, nope, I'm out on the Dalvin Cook bandwagon because of what he did to me last year. Not only have we heard Stefania talk about how confident she is in his return from injury, but now seeing that run, I'm all in on Dalvin Cook being a top probably 12 to 14 player in the back half of the first, early part of the second for me.
Yeah, I think he's going to go within the first 15 picks of most drafts now because of running back depth and because we saw him play really well as a rookie prior to that injury.
Yep.
Kyle passes along this notes that Dalvin Cook, 35.7% of his carries have gone 5+ yards. 12.1% of his carries have gone 10+ yards. Christian McCaffrey, just for reference, both players have been in the league for 2 years. 35.4% of his carries have gained 5+ yards, and 11.6% of his carries have gone 10+ yards. The point is, Dalvin Cook is an explosive dude. Chris Godwin has played every snap this preseason that Jameis Winston has also played. Daniel, are we starting to buy the hype on Chris Godwin? Had you already purchased it many, many months ago? Where are you at on Chris Godwin based off what we've seen?
I like Chris Godwin as a low-end wide receiver, too, for me. I like the idea of, although I'm going to be honest, quite nervous about the entire Buccaneers offense after watching the Browns defense just decimate Jameis Winston.
Yeah, it's weird. That offensive line was just, I mean, they were ragdolled.
Yeah.
Now, the Browns have a very good defensive line.
Really good defense.
I could hear Keith screaming.
Yeah, I might take him in like the probably 6th or 7th round. Do you think that's
it'd be interesting fantasy defense? Again, good defense and good fantasy defense don't always correlate, but sacks, interceptions are good things in fantasy football. I do think, though, that the offensive line for Tampa scares me enough. So does Jameis Winston. But Godwin, though.
I am in on Godwin. I like him as a low-end wide receiver, too. At the very least, for me, he's going to be a flex play with how much Jameis is going to throw the ball, his ability to be able to not only get open, but, Bruce Arians has talked about how they just want him to be heavily involved in this passing game.
Yeah, and that's been bared out by the fact that he's played every single snap. Again, there's a changing of the offense from last year, but high octane last season. I expect it to be the same way this year, and it's clear he's a number 2 wide receiver there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The only question may be who the number 3 wide receiver is. We'll continue to figure that out this season. We're in on Godwin. He had a really good year last year, a little bit of up and down, a little bit more of a yo-yo player last year, but he'll be way more consistent.
Is it ridiculous to think that because their running backs are probably going to struggle mightily, that they're just going to, would it shock you if Jameis Winston was top 3 in pass attempts in 2019?
No, it wouldn't. Top 3 in pass attempts, top 3 interceptions wouldn't surprise me at all.
Either one, yeah.
Maybe top 5 in passing yards, too. That's
seriously
totally viable.
Yeah.
J.J. Arcega-Whiteside had a big game. There was no Alshon Jeffrey. There was no Carson Wentz. Sort of like a mini segment of just one. Is this news or noise to you?
This is noise for me in a redraft league right now. I love when you look at what he could potentially be and almost like taking on that Alshon role if anything were to happen, if Alshon were to get hurt. Or if you're looking in a dynasty league, a couple years down the road, he looks like a big-bodied wide receiver that can come in and be able to make some plays. But right now for 2019, loved being able to see this in the preseason, love to be able to see the talent, but he's not a redraft option for me unless it's a deeper league.
The only way that there's value for me right now, Daniel, is if Philly does something unexpected right now at the end of the roster cut down. Just because Howie Roseman, who oversees football ops there for them, is really creative. He just does a lot of things in a lot of ways. He makes a lot of trades. He says a lot of players. He's audacious. I don't count on Alshon Jeffrey being cut. In no way do I expect that, right?
Sure.
If anything, it might make more sense after this season. So where I think it sort of is fantasy relevant for JJ is promising, gives you confidence that if they were to move on from Alshon Jeffrey after this year, that you kind of know there's a reason behind it. It's not just the money involved, it's that you've got a really good player in Arcega-Whiteside, 2nd-round pick out of Stanford, a guy who has incredible bloodlines. Both of his players are basketball players at the professional level overseas. The guy is a freak athlete. We kind of saw some of that over the weekend.
I love that. I love hearing that, but I want to know who is that number 2 in Philly that you're feeling confident in right now?
I'd say so the number 1 player in the passing offense remains Zach Ertz.
Yep.
Then it's Alshon Jeffrey.
Yep.
Then it's Deshaun Jackson. And the volume may not be there, but again, they've got 3 good, major pass catching threats. And that doesn't even include the guys who are going to be involved in the passing game out of the running backs.
Yeah.
And they've got 8 running backs.
They have
future Houston Texan.
I was going to say they've got so many back there.
They do. Keyshawn Johnson, who is on campus at ESPN today, is a fine analyst for us here as part of the team. The other Keyshawn Johnson is a rookie wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, they drafted 3 this year. Andy Isabella's banged up and has been banged up and has seemingly sort of fallen behind the 8 ball. Hakeem Butler, 4th-round pick out of Iowa State, a guy that some people in the draft community loved.
Yeah. Well, because
slide to the 4th round.
He's 6'5", right?
6'5".
Can't
ran
teach
like
that.
a 4. You can't teach that. Ran like a 4.45 40. Unbelievable physical traits. But there was something that the NFL wasn't enamored by.
Yeah.
Slides to the 4th round. He's on IR with a finger injury, Daniel, which almost tells you, I'm just sort of reading between the lines here. You have a finger injury and they put you on IR, you're done for the year. It almost feels like, hey, you know something? It was clear on August 26th you weren't necessarily going to contribute this year. Let's redshirt you.
Yeah.
So anyways, Keyshawn Johnson caught all 7 of his targets for 85 yards, and 4 of those came from Kyler Murray being on the field. Now, a couple of things here. It's preseason.
Yep.
Larry Fitzgerald don't mess with preseason.
Nope.
All right? Michael Crabtree was not even officially on the roster. He officially signed yesterday. Any value here, though, for Keyshawn Johnson?
The value that I would see is after Larry Fitzgerald, after Michael Crabtree, after Christian Kirk, after David Johnson. So at best for me, he's going to be the 5th pass catcher in this offense.
I think where it sort of stands out is, again, some of our audience is people that are doing rookie dynasty leagues.
Sure.
Don't forget about him because Fitz, 1-year contract. Michael Crabtree, 1-year contract. Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, yes, but Keyshawn Johnson, who's to say that he can't? They have a track record in Arizona. They've whiffed a lot in the draft.
Sure.
But they have also found some smaller school or lightly drafted players that have turned out to be something.
I think it's really valuable in a dynasty league format, the idea that Keyshawn Johnson is not on IR the way that Hakeem Butler is and is able to potentially develop that rapport with Kyler Murray, who's going to be the face of this franchise for who knows how long. That year is going to give him a huge leg up, I think, on anybody else that is not out on the playing field.
Kyler is 1.01 in many people's rookie dynasty ranks.
Yep.
If you're going to hitch your wagon to Kyler, it might be smart to look at some of his weapons as well. The 49ers backfield's really crowded. Now, it's possible, not a guarantee, but it's possible that Jerick McKinnon may return to practice this week. I have sort of wondered aloud whether he ends up on IR. If that's not the case, then, it's interesting to see how they'll use him at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
But for right now, it's Matt Breida versus Tevin Coleman in terms of which player you more prefer right now based off of not just overall ability, but also where they're being drafted, Daniel. Do you have a strong take on which of these two who do you have more shares of this year?
I was going to say a strong take. No, I don't have a strong take. I have a weak take of I sort of like Tevin Coleman. I've taken him in a number of leagues, and I've had him probably as my, RB4. When I've been getting there, just somebody that I think, especially within that Mike Shanahan offense, understanding that he's been there before, has the potential to, be a quote unquote the lead back. Now, what the lead back is in a 3-headed running back by committee is yet to be seen, especially with Jerick McKinnon, hopefully returning to practice this week. We'll see how that all susses out. But I think I'm a little bit more on Tevin Coleman this year. Where are you at?
I like the value of Breida a lot. He's being drafted around running back 40, and I think that he's a better runner than Tevin Coleman in some ways. Tevin Coleman's an excellent one-cut runner, but Breida really good after contact, has excellent balance. The dude played through a million injuries last year. The guy is tough as nails. That much is for sure. But Tevin Coleman's a more versatile back, catching the football out of the backfield, catching the football out of the slot. So I don't wish for Jerick McKinnon to not play this year. But in some ways, if they can't get Jerick McKinnon on the field at the beginning of the season, there's a lot of clarity on the Matt Breida, Jerick McKinnon. I think both Matt Breida and also Tevin Coleman would be easy fantasy wins.
Sure.
It would be fantasy wins, but they would be Like, I can envision 2 running backs from the backfield of the 49ers carrying weekly fantasy value. I can't imagine it if Jerick McKinnon has a role. Like, I can't imagine all 3.
I would agree with that. The idea that they could be low-end flex plays or something like that. Also, I'm really disappointed in you. I believe I said Mike Shanahan.
I didn't call you out, huh?
Yeah, you're supposed to. I just figured everyone that sits in this chair says things that are incorrect, and I just it hurts my feelings that I can't be corrected by you, Field.
It's Kyle Shanahan,
Thank you,
dummy.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What else did you screw up? We need we need stat guy.
Yeah,
we need our own Tony Reale.
Yeah.
We have Kyle, but we need our own Tony Reale here on the show. One more thing.
Last one.
Damien Williams. You all the way back in. Damien Williams for the Chiefs had this beautiful long touchdown catch. Now, it was a not very long pass that he took for a long ride for a touchdown for a run after the catch. Again, it's funny how fantasy football, we can be sort of so attached to just one play.
Yep.
But is that one play enough for you to be back in on Damien? And maybe I shouldn't suggest that you were out, but should people that were out on Damien Williams be reminded they should be back in on him now?
I think so.
Okay.
I like the idea that Damien Williams is going to get the majority of the work in that backfield. I have drafted my fair share of Darwin Thompson, especially to be able to handcuff with Damien Williams just in case something happens there. But I like everything that he can be this year. There is a huge question mark. I mean, he's, I believe, 27 years old. Kyle, is that correct? He's 27?
On it.
Okay.
And so the idea that, he can come in and be a low-end RB2 and, especially in this kind of an offense, he has the high-end RB2 upside just with how efficient this offense is going to be. So seeing this, even though it's preseason, these are the kind of things that when there are question marks around guys, small sample size, or, why is he just now coming onto the field and as a 27-year-old he's going to take over a backfield? Like, these are the things that you want to see in the preseason that give you a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, I'd say here's just a good reminder that if he does play, okay, as the unquestioned running back with the Chiefs, the value is sky high.
Yep.
And even if he's not the unquestioned running back, that, he doesn't have to be like Darwin Thompson can get some of his, because you're barely seeing Carlos Hyde, who sounds like he could be future Texans running back, Carlos Hyde. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think there's a lot to like there, right? But
yeah.
Keep an eye on Carlos Hyde over the next few days, but I don't know that the value is as a starting running back for the Texans.
Agreed.
Anyways, Damien Williams, just to me, it helped reinforce why we've been bullish on Damien Williams. And again, in some ways, the best value for a running back is, excellence in the passing game, right?
Yep.
If you play in PPR leagues, that can set a huge high floor. Hiring is challenging, Daniel, but there's one place you can go where hiring is simple, fast, and smart. A place where growing business is connected to qualified candidate. That place is ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. By the way, we need to put a stat guy post on ZipRecruiter. This would be a supplement to Kyle. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. As applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate to the site within the first day. Immediate gratification. I love it. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. One more time for all those in the back, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy, focus.
All right, Daniel, I'm going to sort of hand the reins over to you because we have a fantasy show league to fill out this year again.
You bet we do. We are no longer doing the man's league or the women's league. We're just going to do a show league. I am going to be in one division. Stefania Bell is going to be in another division.
Yep.
16 teams. I'm going to run through. As you know, Matthew Berry is very generous.
Yes, he is.
About giving away slots to the show league before we even get to the season. So I'm going to run through the people that we already have in the league.
Yep.
Invites will be coming out ASAP for you to be able to sign up, and then we'll have a couple of spots that we're going to fill here. So Stanley, the V Foundation winner from 2018, he is going to be in the league this year. Eric Spratford, excuse me.
Do we have, okay, Stanley, that's right. Stanley, our friend who came here last week.
Yep.
Last year, I should say.
Last year.
Good buddy, Stanley. I've
Good
kept
buddy.
up with him. What a nice guy he is.
He's a great guy.
Super nice guy, and him and his brother had a great time when they came last time.
Yeah, it was fantastic to be able to have them. I'm excited to have them in the league this year. Eric Spratford was the V Foundation winner from this year in 2019.
And is he coming to visit us or what?
Eric is going to come to visit us as well as being a part of the league.
Aboard,
so that'll be fantastic.
Okay.
And then we got a couple of people from last year that we put in as alternates. So we have Andrew Baldock, who, when we asked the ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week question, who would you take to war with you?
Yeah.
He had the funny answer of saying that he would take Matthew specifically to war because every platoon, every division needs that funny guy to be able to help keep spirits high.
Okay,
It was a really good...
I remember that emotional email. Yep.
Yeah, so that was really good. So, Andrew, you are going to be in the league with this year. We also have Irish Declan. If you remember last year, he came up with a bunch of Irish names for all of us to be able to be a part of the league. So, Irish Declan will be in the show league this year, as well as Strider Jacobson. Strider, do you remember from the New York Live show last year at Caroline's? He came in. Strider is actually named after the movie Lord of the Rings. Kyle, have you ever seen Lord of the Rings?
Hard pass. Never seen it.
Hard pass.
I've never seen it. That's just
so. The interesting part is that I feel like the safe answer there should just say I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you don't need to say hard pass, Kyle.
Right. You can just be like, I haven't seen it. I'm sorry, I owe it to you. But Kyle's like, no. Never seen it.
Never seen it. Not interested at all.
No, there's a lot of movies I haven't seen that I have some interest in them. That's just not one of them.
Wow. I'm reassessing our friendship right now. We also have Seth and Sam, who last year, if you remember, talked about dressing up for Halloween as both you and Matthew. They were an alternate for last year's.
Yeah, and they're in this year.
They are in this year. So Seth and Sam, as a team together.
Good. Okay,
they're going to co-manage a team. We are also putting in Andrea Provenzino, who we met at the Detroit show. If you remember, she came this year and has dedicated. She cut off. She had very long hair.
Yep.
And she donated her hair to be able to be used for people that would need it. And so, Andrea, we want to say congratulations and welcome to the show league this year.
Welcome.
And so now I am going to get to a couple of submissions. That is everybody who was already in, getting caught up. So now these are new spots that are going to be filled right now.
So we have 6, 7, 8. How many spots left?
7 spots are filled, plus Stefania and I is 9, so we have 7 spots left.
Okay, 7 spots left. So here we go. And by the way, further submissions can be sent to
fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com.
Love it. Okay.
Here we go. This one comes from Ray and Skylar. I decided about 2.5 years ago that I needed to lose weight. I was tired of the laughter and whispers and everything that goes with being morbidly obese, but more than that, as a newish dad, I had a responsibility to my wife and daughter to get in better shape and to be around for a long time. As I write this, I'm down nearly 200 pounds and just survived Disney World in July with my now 4-year-old daughter. It was a difficult journey and one I couldn't have done without you and the rest of the crew. I started slow with short walks around the neighborhood and improving my diet before finally dragging myself to the gym. The 060 became the soundtrack to my walks and my trips to the gym that then continue to this day. I love fantasy football. I love the game, the fun of the draft, managing a team, and sharing the experience with friends in a league. But more than the information on the show, the entertainment made the grueling challenge and change in my lifestyle that much more bearable. I know that without something to take the tedium of cardio and to make it bearable, I'd never have succeeded in making this change. It may not mean much, but whether you realize it or not, your silly little podcast is probably helping more people than you realize. Take one more step, do one more rep, and just lead happier and healthier lives. I can't thank you all enough. I know you're going through a tough time with everything going on right now with the podcast and in the fantasy industry, and I hope that you'll find some joy and some comfort and solace in knowing that what you guys do has helped to change at least one life. All my best to you and the whole 06010. That is from Ray and Skylar. I just think that's such an incredible story.
Love it. Ray, amazing. There's a picture that he attached as well. And Ray, first of all, I suppose you'll be listening to this soon. You look incredible. Your work, what you have done to reshape your body and reshape your life is amazing. Skylar may not be able to properly express her gratitude at this age of her life, but trust that when she is a beautiful grown young girl, she will appreciate what you have done. And there are days where, as Ray said, this feels like just a silly little podcast. And there are days where we come in and it feels like it's like another day back on the hamster wheel. But then once you get going and the lights come on, so to speak, the show means a lot to us every single day.
100%.
And the listeners, unparalleled. I can't imagine a more loyal audience.
No, I can't either. And I love the idea of Field. I think we're going to make the decision because Matthew and Stefania are not here today. I love the idea of not only being able to reward somebody who has worked so hard and has meant so much to us, but also this would be probably Skylar's first fantasy league.
I was just going to say, Daniel, can I ask one thing of Ray?
Sure.
My only request of you, Ray, is that if we allow you into the league, would you please consider co-managing, right?
Yes.
Like this is definitely a joint team.
Exactly.
Right? And because you're right, this is the foreground for this is Skylar's chance to learn the ins and outs of fantasy football. And what's really cool is that this won't just be this year. This will be probably, in perpetuity. Every year they'll play together.
Yep. And I love it. Ray and Skylar, what are we going to say?
Welcome to the show league.
Well, okay. Ray and Skylar, welcome to the show league.
Put it on the board.
Awesome.
It actually sort of rolls off the tongue. I'm good with it.
That worked.
Right.
I like it.
Very cool. I love that. I can see you getting emotional. Right? This was one of those notes that even if you've already read it, it impacts you directly.
Certainly does.
Very cool.
Certainly does. All right.
By the way, I just learned something. I mean, quick digression.
Bring it.
You're like the Schefter of podcast producers. You've got 2 phones?
I do have 2 phones.
What kind of nonsense are you juggling over here?
Is that wrong to have 2 phones? I have a work phone, I have a personal phone. So when I want to be able to...
Which number do I have?
You have my personal phone number, Field.
Okay, gotcha. So the work, but like what?
I want the work phone so that like when I do emails and things like that, I can disconnect and set this aside. And now when it's a weekend, I can just have my personal phone and not have to worry about like. Otherwise, I'm one of those people that like I just won't ever disconnect.
Okay, good to know.
So
I got it.
You know what I'm saying?
Duly noted. Schefter.
Right. Hey, for the record, Daniel, I do the same.
Do you really?
I do.
Oh, that's not cool.
He's got 2 phones too. How many do you have, Kyle?
For the same reason.
Kyle's got one.
I'm Team One Phone. Shout out to all the listeners that are also Team One Phone.
Marisa will only let him have 1 phone.
Hey, now.
True.
Relax.
All right. Here's a second submission before we take some Twitter questions to end this show.
Yep.
Hello, Fantasy Focus crew. My name is Josh Fielder, and I wanted to throw my hat in for the Listener League. I am a longtime listener of the 0600, and I've always wanted to be in one of the leagues in addition to listening to the podcast, playing fantasy religiously, and raising my 3 kids. I also play guitar in a crappy band people have never heard of called the Juliana Theory. We did have a song in a Disney movie called Motorcrossed, so I guess you could say I'm a company fan.
Da-da-da, da-da-da.
Oh my god!
No, but see, I'm like a crappy band,
Thank
so
you.
I improvise
so
as
good.
if I were a crappy band.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
We had broken up for quite some time, but this fall we are getting back together and doing an acoustic tour with the Spill Canvas. So I need another league to help me pass the time on these long drives between shows, and I would love to follow in the footsteps of Tyson Motzenbacher, Tillian, and Eli as the crappy band you have never heard of.
So one question for you.
Yep.
Have you ever heard of Spilled Canvas previously?
I have heard of Spill Canvas for sure. I have heard of the Juliana Theory as well.
Okay, so...
Have you heard of the Juliana Theory?
No, I hadn't.
Okay, that's what I need.
Or Spill Canvas.
Or the Spill Canvas.
So, what was this person's first name again?
Joshua.
Joshua Fielder, no relation to Prince. You are part of the crappy band that no one's ever heard of that plays for the crappy band that no one's ever heard of.
Yes.
That's incredible. Like, do we have, like, are there degrees to crappy bands or no?
I'll say this. For me, there's not a degree to that. Maybe for Matthew. Matthew, I'm sure would have some snarky remark about a crappy band here.
Sure, of course.
Very honestly, when I was in basic training, and I'll try not, this is going to be hard. I'll try not to get emotional about this too.
Aw, it's okay.
But when I was in basic training, it was about a week and a half in, and it just sucked. It was it was terrible.
Sure.
And I went and as a part of one of the things that we did, they played a video for us in one of our little trainings that we did. And the background of that music was a Juliana Theory song. I had known Juliana Theory for a long time of that. And it was a big reminder of there is stuff outside of this moment. Right now, this is not everything.
Got it.
And so
very cool.
Everything that they have done to be able to impact my life. I love the idea that Josh is an 06010 listener and a band that I've looked up to and listened to for 15 years. And knowing that Matthew and you have never heard of them, I think it would be great to be able to have another crappy band you have never heard of in the show league. And so I personally would love to be able to put Josh in the show league field. If you have any objections, let me know.
No objections, but again, a request.
Right. Okay.
Josh, we need to figure out where we can listen to your music. If it's not available yet, like online somewhere, I'm sure it's on Spotify or iTunes or something.
It is on all those places. I am also going to there playing a show in Brooklyn, I believe, on December 8th. I will be down there in Brooklyn, so if you want to come out, come and hang out and catch the Juliana Theory and the Spill Canvas. But
you know something, Daniel? I'm a charitable guy. I'm the Santa Claus.
You are.
Of the 06010, right? I mean, minus the long beard and old and round tummy for the most part.
Yeah. You're actually like nothing like Santa Claus now that you start to describe what you are.
That's a good point. Santa Claus shows up once a year. I try to be at the podcast every single day.
Exactly.
Whatever. I like Santa Claus. Anyways, I'm in a giving mood. I'm in.
You want to do it?
Let's do it.
Josh, welcome to the show league.
Put it on the board.
I was almost going to say welcome to the league show. Any other submissions right now or no?
We have some more. I'm going to save them so that Matthew and Stefania can get
in on the mix.
Get in the mix. They can weigh in a little bit, but really excited to be able to add both Josh. It's phenomenal to me to be able to. I know that this is not a big thing, but Josh and Ray both, I'm excited that you guys can come and participate. It is going to be fun to beat you both in fantasy this year, and it'll be cool for you guys to play for second place.
Just want to say, that's right. Good luck playing for second place. If you tell us about the beauty of why fantasy football means something to you, you're going to immediately pique our interest. And I know that this, people play fantasy football for a lot of reasons. And when people ask me what I do, or if, I'm sitting there with relatives describing like, oh yeah, like my son or my cousin or my brother or my husband, whatever it is, like covers fantasy football for a living. Some people say to themselves like, what? Are you kidding me? Like that's a job? The impact that fantasy football has had in so many people's lives never, ever, ever ceases to amaze me. So the more you share your stories, the more appreciative we are. And just know the listeners, the viewers, everybody that finds a way, the downloaders, we are grateful to you. Let's get to a couple of Twitter questions to put some icing on the cake of this show. And Keith, we hand the baton to you, my friend.
All right, thank you. The first one it's a little bit long here, so listen through it here. It's I have a number 1 pick in a standard 8-team league.
Okay.
And I need some insider advice. Should I really be all in on Saquon? He says, I already have pre-draft offers. He says, collusion, I know. For as high as someone's first and second round picks. They pick at 6th, unfortunately. He says, so any thoughts you would have would be greatly appreciated.
Wait.
I don't think that's collusion. One, I mean, trading draft picks is totally fine. That is not collusion. So the idea is he would trade the number 1 overall pick, which he would have used on Saquon, for the 6th pick in the first round, and that person's also second round pick. And then he would have his second round pick as well.
So he would end up with, rather than having just pick 1 and pick 16, he would have pick 6
and 11.
11 and 16.
And still 16.
No, I wouldn't do it.
Really?
Basically anytime someone asks me the question where like option A is Saquon and option B is anything else, like it's hard for me to say like, no, don't do that. It reminds me in some ways of these trade ups in the real NFL draft where it's like, would you rather have 3 first-round picks or would you rather have the quarterback you believe in? In this case, like I'd rather have the unquestioned number 1 player in fantasy football.
That's interesting. I struggle with the idea of like 6 is where it gets hard for me. If it was like 4 and I knew I would get one of those top tier backs, but you might have all 5 of those running backs go, and now you're at a position where you're looking at like DeAndre Hopkins or Devontae Adams.
This could be, in theory, you could be looking at like.
Does it change that it's an 8-team league? Does 8 teams make that easier or harder for this move?
It makes it easier for this move to make the trade because, the premium is, like 6 and 11, like. Your second round pick is 11th overall. Like that's pretty good. That's right pretty there. Good. Where in some ways that might be the back end of the first round pick. So it's tough. I'd say no, but I don't know that I think that's a flimsy take by me. I don't feel that strongly about it.
I would say this. I would say I'm going to take Saquon number 1 overall, and based on who's available at 6, I will let you know whether or not I want to make that deal, and that's the only way that I would go into this
interesting.
situation.
Daniel trying to get, I like it, having your cake and eating it too.
You know what I mean?
Smart right there, yeah.
You're coming to me wanting the pick in the first place, so I'm going to dictate some of the terms.
And it's not like you're coming to me with any mystery. You're coming to me for Saquon.
Yep.
Interesting. I like that school of thought. I changed my answer to what Daniel said.
All right, Brian wants to know, has James Washington showed enough this preseason for you to believe he's a wide receiver 2 in Pittsburgh week 1?
No. He showed me enough that he's playing with Mason Rudolph is what he showed me enough of. And I like James Washington, and it's totally possible he could be, but the caveat there was week 1 in Pittsburgh. I think it's Dante Moncrief's job at the beginning of the season.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I've been all in on Dante Moncrief as in a number of my drafts, and I think that this was, as we have talked about throughout this entire show, what I have been looking for in the preseason is to be able to show that I have confidence in players based on what they have done when it counts.
Yeah, it's where they're being utilized within their own team. And so far it's clear that he is playing. He's had some nice moments, but he's also playing with the twos in some ways.
And
so,
even when he looks good with the twos, he's playing with the twos.
Right, playing with the twos against the twos or the threes.
Yep.
What else, Keith?
D-Cal wants to know. That's D-Cal.
Okay.
Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
Do you go out of your way to try to pair your your quarterback with a pass catcher?
I do not, personally. I don't go out of my way. I also don't avoid it. We get this question frequently, and we had this conversation, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about, are you against Nick Chubb plus OBJ?
Yep.
I don't worry about players being on the same team. Either I target it or I avoid it. The reality is a lot of the best players in fantasy football come from the very same teams because they're 8 or 10 really great offenses each year.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me.
I like the idea of when it makes sense and it just organically falls there. I am all about it. Like Field says, I'm not avoiding it, but I'm not, if I draft Nuke in the first round, I'm not going to take Deshaun Watson in the third just to make sure I have the stack. It's going to be too high. And I'm also not going to just take Jameis Winston because I drafted Mike Evans, because now I'm waiting maybe too long on a quarterback. So there's a sweet spot sort of in the middle where if it makes sense, and I love being able to stack, but I'm not, it's more of a tiebreaker decision for me than it is I am seeking out to make sure this happens on my roster.
Would agree. John Jones wants to know, would you rather have a guy with a defined role like Latavius Murray or go for a role upside type guy like Justin Jackson?
Okay, so in this specific instance, I would definitely prefer Latavius Murray.
Agreed.
Yeah, it may not be a great example because Murray has a role there, and could be amazing.
What
in
if
that
you?
offense.
What if we supplanted Justin Jackson with Nyheim Hines?
I'd still go with Latavius Murray. Touchdown upside there is significant, but sort of the hypothetical is really upside versus ceiling, right? Define ceiling, which is how I would sort of re-trigger roll and say ceiling versus the upside. All the usual, hey, depends on how your roster has shook out so far, all that. I'm chasing the upside. I just am. Again, they don't reward second place in fantasy football, right? You have to score the most points at the end of the season and then, score the most points in the most weeks during the season and et cetera versus your opponent. But yes, I chase the upside.
And Latavius Murray is not a guy that's going to be unusable. I mean, he's still going to get run even behind Alvin Kamara. And so, he's more than just a handcuff. He's somebody that if you needed, you could throw him in there in your flex play on a bye week because you've got another injured running back, and he's not ideal, but he's definitely going to be getting touches in that offense.
Just to put a pin in this part, Justin Jackson, clearly the number 2 running back right now for the Chargers based off of preseason usage. Our friend Adam Levitan notes 40 snaps for Austin Eckler so far, 23 for Justin Jackson this preseason. Great questions as always. Remember, continue to submit your submissions. That was weird. For the show league at fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Submit your submissions.
Submit your submissions.
People. Submit your submissions there. In the meantime, we're back tomorrow with all kinds of good stuff. I'm sure we'll talk more about Andrew Luck to get Stefania and Matthew's take. Daniel Dopp, you have been an absolute rock star for here. I like it when you're on this side of the glass.
I appreciate that. If you guys want to do me a solid, you can follow me on Twitter @DanielDopp or on Instagram @SomethingToBreak. It's been fun. I love doing the show with you, bud.
It's been a lot of fun. And reminder, every single day we tape a segment after the show for the ESPN Fantasy Facebook page. Check us out there. We are back on Tuesday. See you then. Peace out.
If you need a stick of Tide, Field is your guy. If you're in Bristol or in Farmington, you should find another ride. Candidly, he hates Mike Clay, and you know that it's a fact. Every Yater's gonna Yate, 'cause he's on TV every day. A spicy tomato who's got got the stats and tweets that'll make you laugh. He's our favorite host, and everybody knows his name.